Welcome to the Healing My Parts podcast, a podcast dedicated to educating and raising awareness about dissociative identity disorder, also known as DID. We are your hosts, the system behind Healing My Parts, which also includes parts that function as a therapist and leader in a mental health niche space. We'll be sharing tips and tools that have helped us and many others, while also sharing insights from our own journey of living with the condition. We'll also be hosting guests for conversations to help educate, dispel myths, and most especially help those living with dissociative identities and professionals who treat the condition. Thank you so much for tuning in. And now, let's get healing. Welcome, everyone. I'm so excited to introduce you to today's guest, who happens to be a good friend of mine. So today feels extra special. I'm pleased to introduce you to Karla Fleshman. And rather than go into all the amazing things that they do, I'm going to toss it over, say, welcome, Karla. And for folks who don't know you and all the amazing work that you do, could you tell us a little bit about yourself professionally?
Sure. And I have to say that I am super excited to hang out with you today. I've been looking forward to this and I'm just feeling the energy inside. So we're glad to go with it. About me, I am a licensed clinical social worker since 1993. I launched my professional career working in pediatric and adult HIV/AIDS in the early 90s, which led me to be pursuing a pathway in seminary. So now I am also an irreverent reverend, as I like to say. And I'm EMDR certified since 2020, advanced certification in dissociation. I'm a consultant in training, practicum facilitator with Institute for Creative Mindfulness. I had the joy of having Queering EMDR Therapy published in September, and I'm a contributor there. I have a group practice in Delaware that centers on serving LGBTQ folks or folks with trauma. As I like to say, you can't be queer in America without experiencing trauma. I have
True.
an amazing team of 7 fabulous therapists, and we are growing. We have a lot of folks relocating from other states, seeking shelter. We want to keep growing the practice to serve the folks that are relocating. I have an amazing wife of over 20 years, an amazing adult kiddo, and we love Legos.
Is there somebody that doesn't love Legos?
If there,
Probably.
we might support them in discovering the joy of Legos.
For folks listening, clearly, Karla is a powerhouse. If we dive a little deeper, personally, you have a pretty big date coming up. And in fact, if all works out well with the tech gods, this episode should actually be dropping right on that date. Can you tell folks a little bit about why November 10th is a big date for you, and let us say for the totality of who you are?
Yes. On November 10th, 2020, I was told that I had breast cancer. In that moment, I was discerning, am I going to live or die? And is democracy going to rise or fall? Because we were still waiting for the election results. We were waiting to see what would happen with the changeover in power. The cancer journey was a journey for sure. I didn't understand why certain aspects of it were a bit dysregulating until November 10th, 2022. It literally fell on the same date. I'm in the breast cancer surgeon's office for a checkup. Let's just say, thanks to the medical model and systems of oppression found in the medical system, I had a major trauma trigger event in which the dissociative amnesic barrier was gone. This November 10th, I'm celebrating 5 years cancer free and 3 years system aware. We are living more full and joyful than November 9th, 2020.
Such a beautiful thing.
Yeah.
Congratulations on remaining in remission and on the discovery of your absolutely phenomenal system.
Thank you. They're an awesome team.
They are. Collectively, what you
are able to do together is really phenomenal. And I'm excited as we move forward for people to learn even more about what you all do. I know a lot of times people are curious when there's somebody like you who has many different roles, right? As therapist, pastor, advocate, writer, you do so many things. Are there particular parts of you that show up when you're doing this kind of like public work?
Well, I can honestly say that now that, I'm more aware of what happens in the headspace and where certain gifts and attributes and talents show up, I can look back in the course of my life and where I planted a church, pastored a church that I founded for 10 years, preached every week. Now, you need to know when I was much younger, I hated public speaking.
Interesting.
Yeah. So the part that experienced a lot of and holds most of the bullying that we experienced through elementary, middle, and particularly high school when it was really vicious, that part doesn't really show up for public speaking. They do now a little more because of being aware of them and working on what I call integrative collaboration, where everybody has invaluable assets, gifts, and skills. As a team, we're stronger working together. So, I am able to look back and go, oh, I can sense where certain energies and aspects and parts of me showed up at certain places and spaces.
I love that so much. Can we give people a glimpse of one of your talents of writing? Because I'm thinking about a really powerful piece that you wrote about who is next.
Mhm.
And I have a couple questions about it, and I wonder if you would be game to read that for folks.
Okay. So, a little backstory. I did experience some pretty intense bullying in high school. When I heard what happened to Nex Benedict a couple of days after they died, this poem does have trauma triggers in it. So please be aware for anyone listening that has experienced severe bullying or have had thoughts of suicidal ideation. Nex died on February 8th, and I couldn't write this poem until September 24 because it hit us really, really hard. And here is who was Nex, who is next. Who's Nex? It is the start of a new school year. Nex lived in Oklahoma. They were 16, identified non binary, and their pronouns were he, they. Who's next? The Trevor Project reports that 90% of queer youth have been negatively impacted by our nation's politics. In Oklahoma, State Senator Tom Woods, when referring to the queer community, is recorded as saying, I represent a constituency that doesn't want that filth in Oklahoma. Who's next? So far, 13 states ban transgender people from using public bathrooms and facilities according to their gender identity. In Oklahoma, there is a 2022 state law requiring transgender people to use the bathroom in schools K through 12 that aligns with their sex assigned at birth. Who's next? 28% of transgender and non binary young people reported that they have been physically threatened or harmed in the past year due to their gender identity. On February 7th, 2024, Nex Benedict was involved in a physical altercation in the girls' restroom at Owassa High School. Nex's family reportedly said that the bullying started after LGBTQ policies began to take effect at the state level. So far, 26 of these United States have banned gender affirming care, including Oklahoma. They say the injuries Nex sustained the day before they died, injuries to their head, neck, torso, and limbs by 3 fellow students, were not lethal. Who's next? LGBTQ plus young people report lower rates of attempting suicide when they have access to affirming spaces and communities. Oklahoma State Superintendent of Public Instruction, Ryan Walters, following the death of 16-year-old Nex Benedict, is recorded as saying, "To make sure that all individuals are safe in a school, we want every student to be protected. That means we're not going to lie to students and we're not going to push a gender ideology." Who's next? Transgender and non-binary young people who have had access to gender-affirming clothing, gender-neutral bathrooms at schools, had their pronouns respected by the people they live with, had lower rates of attempting suicide compared to those who did not. Nex was just a kid who grew up in a country, a state, a community, a school that made it clear they weren't wanted nor protected. The coroner's report ruled Nex engaged in self-harm to end their life. The beating the day before, according to the coroner, was not lethal. Who's next? In Delaware, a shield state, 43% of LGBTQ plus students reported discriminatory policies or practices at their school. 40% of transgender non-binary students were prevented from using their name or pronouns. 25% were prevented from using the bathroom that aligned with their gender identity. 47% experienced verbal harassment. 9% experienced physical assaults. We shouldn't be asking who's next, but if we don't improve on these statistics by way of sound policies, appropriately trained adults in our schools and communities, offering gender and sexuality alliances to our students, it won't be long until we have an answer to the question, who is next? Again, I wrote that September of 2024. 2025 is unprecedented for many of us, not just LGBTQ folks, not transgender, gender expansive folks. It is an unprecedented year for many of us. But we don't know how many we've already lost.
That is such a powerful piece. It is clearly a tribute, a reckoning, staunchly educational for people who keep trying to look the other way. I can think of many things that may have moved you to write this piece, but I want to ask you, when you think about putting pen to paper, what was the primary motivating force for you, and what do you hope that people are going to take away from it? It is incredibly powerful.
I'm feeling a slight emotional pause because the part of me that holds all the memories, it took us a while to write it because that could have been us. You know?
Yeah.
It could have been. I was very suicidal in high school. You know, there's a couple of reasons why I think we're still here. One of which is I've always felt the presence of the God of my understanding with me. That has always been an incredible source of strength. The God of my understanding is really found within my system. And I've come to recognize that and realize that as I've engaged in my own inner healing work of who are we. The other component that is equally important is there were a couple of adults that actually did their best to support me in a system that was pretty non-supportive. It was a teacher who taught biology, and I would hang out in her classroom and hide. The former principal who got kicked out of being a principal after 1 year had a short-term placement as a teacher of history the next year. The two of them were key supports in certain times. But what really inspired me to write it is the part of me that lives that and holds those memories needed to put pen to paper as some of their own healing. But collectively, we also do a lot of training in our community around LGBTQ cultural responsibility. So we've done trainings with therapists and counselors and teachers and doctors. And this poem is basically quotes from articles with some interpretations. It's the Trevor Project, a news article in the Advocate. It's ABC News. It's Glisten. And so I'm really just putting pieces together that are the lived experiences that have been reported. And we need to make a difference to keep kids alive.
Reading it and listening to you read it, one of the things that stands out so much is how you basically made these statistics come alive. Well, and I know that there are many people who are experiencing something similar to you, realizing that could have been me. And the younger folks listening, that could be me. When you had said in the portion of the poem that Nex is just a kid
Mhm.
living in a country. And those of us who are adults, we've all been kids. Some of us have kids. We all know kids. And they're so vulnerable and so deserving of support. And how is it that we're abandoning an entire population of youth, adults as well? But those statistics are incredibly sobering and terrifying.
Yeah. And the statistics, these are all come pre-2025.
Yeah.
And my deep concern and why I ended up writing, when I was asked to submit a journal article to the Delaware Journal of Public Health, I wanted to talk about, the role of dissociation in surviving severe systemic bullying, because that was my experience.
Yeah.
It's only getting worse, for sure. And the need for adults to stop hiding behind, I'm afraid someone's going to yell at me. I'm afraid what's going to happen if I speak up. You're an adult. You have resources and support. You have community. These kids are feeling isolated, are getting isolated. They don't have anybody except you opening your mouth and saying, we have to protect and support these kids. The campaign that's taking place with hundreds of laws that have been put forward and over 100 passed anti-trans laws, state and national. This misinformation campaign is incredible. Stop listening to how trans people are frightening and scary and they're going to come after you. There is no research that supports that at all. Kids are hearing this in schools and they're like, what's my future going to be? I don't have a future. So we need to be out and visible and say, you have a future. I'm your people. I'm going to help you find your people. We need to be the ones facing the bullies in administrations, at school districts, in churches. We need to face the bullies and be the ones to stand them down, because when bullies have someone standing in front of them, challenging them, they do give in. That's what research shows too.
I think that's really helpful for people to take note of, because the fear that silences people is killing youth.
Yeah.
Right? We can name systemic harm and fight against it without sacrificing our kids.
Absolutely.
I
Absolutely.
wonder, knowing that there are therapists, educators that are out there who would really like to be better allies to LGBTQ youth, but they're unsure of how to speak up, where to speak up, sort of like, I want to help. What do I do? What advice would you give to them?
Well, first and foremost, seek out the voices of LGBTQ professionals and trainers, that provide this content material. There's a lot of good quality resources out there that a simple Google search will help you find. There is GLSEN, which is Gay Straight Student Education Network. There is Trans Alliance, Trans Lifeline, Trans Legal Support, the HRC. I mean, I could go on. There's those of us that will do trainings and would be happy to provide a virtual training. I did that under COVID and I still do virtual trainings. I worked with one school district. I worked with their entire counseling crew, over 100 people on their professional development day. We did a 3-hour day training, but I'm working with another group that they want a 5-hour training in person, and they want that training to focus on trauma and dissociative experiences, because it isn't just LGBTQ kiddos that have dissociative experiences and trauma. There's a lot of kids that have dissociative experiences surviving trauma that they're experiencing in real time. They may show up in your classroom or in the library or at some community center, and they are giving you every sign and indication that they're having dissociative experiences, but you're not equipped on it. And so this training that we're in conversation on is, how can I train their staff to be, one, better aware of being able to see the dissociative experience, and two, how can they become safe enough and cultivate relationship?
We'll make sure to link the resources that you mentioned, but absolutely how to find you for folks that are interested in having you train, because what an incredible opportunity for schools, community groups, group practices, and I would also suggest treatment centers
Yes.
who really, really need this information.
Yes.
You wrote a piece called "The Role of Dissociation in Surviving Severe Systemic Bullying." And in that, you describe dissociation as an adaptive response, especially for queer and trans youth. How did you come to that understanding, and how has that shaped your work?
When I started to kind of go, oh, there's more going on in my head than I realized, and I started noticing with my client population at the time, like going, oh, I'm seeing in them non-verbally what I know I'm experiencing. And I honestly think, looking back on that time, as I got calmer inside and began to realize that there was work for not me to do, but for us to do, that resonance within was that mirror neuron for clients to begin coming in and saying, hey, I think I might have DID. Now, when I began having my client population coming out to me with dissociative experiences, unmasking, being more authentic, I really think their system sensed my system, and we began to get more real. I've also been able to bring more clients into working with me, and then also with my fabulous team, being able to see trending with them too, folks with dissociative experience. So I need to give that backstory, because it's not really based on research that I'm aware of. It's more based on our experience in the practice, and beginning to recognize and see the somatic self. So if you think about a baby, and when the baby is born and cries, the parents begin to figure out if the baby's hungry, if the baby wants their diaper changed, they cry. If they want to be held, they cry. Discerning the different types of cries to help nurture. This baby is so in tune with their body and being. So in tune. I talk about the thinking self. The thinking self is this developing little kiddo that is learning social cues and having attachment experiences of varying degrees, watching if I do this, if I smile, if they frown, what I do wrong. The thinking self begins to pay attention to the verbal and nonverbal cues of those around them. Dissociation occurs because around this discerning, sexual orientation, gender identity, gender expression, right? What I call SOGI. we get to the conceptual self. Dissociative experiences begin when somatically they know who they are, even at a very, very young age. And research does show that kiddos know their gender identity, and I also believe their sexual orientation before they have those words. Research shows that shows up between ages 3 and 4. They know. And some kiddos, because they're discerning cues and they're noticing different body types, are saying, "Oh, I'm just like," and then being told, "No, you're not." So this is where we talk about the conceptual self. And the conceptual self are the narratives that are placed on the little one. The conceptual self begins in utero. We have these gender reveal parties. And so as soon as we have these, what are really sex assigned at birth parties, the in utero development, and we know hearing is the first to really develop. And we also know in end of life, hearing is the last to go. I've done hospice work, so hearing is key. This little developing energy is hearing all of these narratives of what's expected of them. Just think about that. We know
Yeah.
epigenetics, we know factors involving stress on the body for the developing child inside. The conceptual self, they are born, and there's a disconnect between how they feel within with what messages they receive. And this is where I believe this is where they start leaving being below the neck and fully embodied to being just in their headspace. They are trying to conform to the conceptual self of narratives placed on them. Then we get to the observational self, which is the fourth self that I talk about. And the observational self is when, for LGBTQ folks, this can show up in a very abrupt way called puberty. They begin to recognize, okay, I'm really not trending and tracking like some of my peers. I feel really different. And then they begin to notice, if they're lucky enough, they find a website that's not been scrubbed or blocked from their school. They begin to find stories of themselves. This is actually where social media has helped kiddos come out so much earlier in life. It's not like it's trending and they just want to do what their friends do and it's not real. These kids are actually getting resources a lot earlier. The observational self kind of goes, I don't feel the way my friend feels when they think about this person, but I feel this way when I think about that friend.
Makes sense.
And so the observational self, if we begin to return to somatic, your mindfulness and meditative practices, ways to be in the body, then that can be, oh, I'm not who they say I am. I know who I am. And depending on what that little one growing up, depending on the attachment, if they have other trauma experiences outside of trying to come out into their true self, such as sexual trauma, physical trauma, all those adverse experiences, particularly if you pay attention to the Philadelphia ACEs rather than just the Kaiser Permanente ACEs, this is where the dissociation occurs to survive. How am I going to survive? I'm not welcomed here. I'm not safe here. How do I become safe enough? This is where I think dissociative experiences come into play. The more trauma a person experiences and the younger the trauma begins, the more dissociative experiences and ways of adapting in the time of distress is going to happen.
There's so much important information there. All that you just explained really helps people see how layered the dissociative experience is, especially for LGBTQ youth. Yeah, if the first time somebody's able to identify, and we'll say things like the first time I dissociated was the sex assigned at birth.
Yeah.
Figuring out how to move through life where you're at this constant push-pull of my authentic self, who I really am, versus what everybody's telling me I have to be based on attributes. It feels confusing, and dissociation makes so much sense.
So I also want to say that within the trans community, you're going to have higher rates of people also having autism and ADHD, right?
Yep.
And so, because we live in a culture that really leans heavily into what I call binary opposition, that everything is a binary, either left, right, up, down, right? The binary would be male, female. That's it. You're right or wrong. That's it. You're black or white. You're neurotypical or you're neurodivergent. And I like to just call bullshit that everything is on a spectrum, everything. And how our brains develop based on our experiences, we need to move away from a normal brain and a fragmented brain. And we need to move towards there are different normal brains based on how they are the neurological development in relationship with the cultural social experiences.
That makes so much sense,
Yeah.
term. But we need to stop thinking about normal as common, right?
Yes.
And what is familiar is not necessarily the same thing as normal. You can have an umbrella, and under the umbrella, things can look different and still be normal.
Yes.
But we don't do that.
No.
We have all these binaries and a linear sort of quote unquote spectrum, when really it is the collection underneath that umbrella can have many different constellations and makeups and still be normal, albeit potentially uncommon for some people. It's like we need to change how we're thinking about folks.
Yeah. It's really important that we begin to push back on narratives that support a hierarchy top down and narratives that support this medical model and mental health model. Like, I am one that really says, do not, and I'm trying this on, so let me play with it here a little bit. I really want to begin pushing back with someone saying that my brain is neurodivergent because of trauma. My brain is normal. It's a type of normal. And that I'm not fragmented and I don't have a haunted self. What if we really paid attention that, yes, there is traumagenic plurality, but the DSM, which I like to call the dumb, stupid manual.
I'm sorry, that's great.
I started calling the DSM the dumb, stupid manual because, well, that's a tangent. Let me say this, so much of what's studied, particularly in the United States, so much of what shows up in the DSM has to have a pharmaceutical attached to it. That's where the money is. We don't do adequate research where there isn't a pharmaceutical that can underwrite the research. Money dictates what gets researched. And there are aspects of the DSM that I think are wrong. And that really does show up for gender dysphoria, with that being in there. And it also shows up for dissociative experiences. So, okay, let's go back to an individual has enough trauma experiences that they cultivate self states to survive it and then continue to be alive. If you're alive, thriving is in your future. What we need to do is not try to fuse everyone medical model. What we also need to recognize is each self state, each part, big P part, insider, headmate, needs to experience their own healing journey.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
And missed by many.
Missed by many. I've started to dive into Virginia Satir, who's someone that I read in the late 80s and early 90s when I was getting my bachelor's and master's. I realized that so much of her work is embedded in my narrative, that she may be the origin of some of my beliefs and practices as a clinician. She talked about family therapy, right? She did a lot of work around family therapy, and she does actually have literature around parts. So what if we talked about internal family therapy? Let's stop calling it internal family system and that treatment model, but internal family therapy that allows each part, each self state to get its place, to experience some healing. Other headmates can help headmates in the healing process.
Yes.
This is why it's important that therapists invite whoever wants to show up to receive therapy.
With acceptance, unconditional positive regard, fancy long word for love,
Yeah.
that all parts are truly welcome
Yeah,
and seen in their own right. Rather
absolutely.
rather than that insistence of like who's the core part, who's the main part when there potentially isn't one.
Absolutely. So, in the process of changing the narratives, and there's so many layers that we can look at changing the narratives, we can actually move the medical mental health shame narrative out of the therapeutic environment.
Allowing people to blossom in their own right as uniquely okay. Sitting here thinking about how did we ever get to a place where that's not an okay thing? But you named it when you talked about a lot of our systems are driven by financial benefits to pharmaceutical companies. I'm going to go a little dark for a moment. Also, to protect people who have more nefarious goals. And we silence people. So, in the dumb, stupid manual, which I'm never going to forget going forward, we're all given the lie that complex dissociation, DID, OSDD is rare. And we all know that it's not.
Prior to our meeting to record this episode, I did a virtual training with Trans Pride Uniting Conference. Someone messaged me, and it was focused on really systemic bullying, dissociation as adaptive response within LGBTQ. And actually, a couple of people have private messaged me, not hearing this before, and going, "Oh, when you mentioned the misdiagnoses that often show up and the narratives that are often used, I had a client come to me say that they were major depression treatment resistant. Fuck that.
Yeah.
One of the things that I said to the
God.
folks that attended this virtual workshop, some were therapists, some were queer, I like to say queerific, transtastic. By now you realize I like to play with narratives and play with language. I made it really clear. And we covered EMDR. Like someone said, this was my EMDR experience. I was like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. So I put it in the chat for them, the Institute for Creative Mindfulness, where you will find queer trained, affirming, dissociative trained, affirming therapists. So important. So many people have had bad therapy experiences, and you are never to blame for a bad therapy experience with a therapist. It is the therapist's professional responsibility to get consultation and training. You are never the one at fault. Whatever I can do to help you release the shame that somehow you messed up therapy. I mean, there's other factors. It might not be a therapeutic fit. You might not be ready for therapy. But to have someone put the blame on you.
I wonder if you could maybe speak a little bit to therapists to help clarify what it really looks like to truly welcome all parts into the therapy space. Because as I was listening to you, I started seeing a little bit of confusion for certain providers who are trying to do it right because they've been trained by fill in the blank modality. It really doesn't matter which modality we fill in the blank of. And some of the folks that are training people in various modalities have a very specific way of doing it. And there are many clinicians that are afraid of doing it wrong. They're going, quote, against a model. They're going to be criticized or ostracized by the academics, by the instructors. For example, I have folks come up to me at the Meta conference saying they were trained by a pretty well-known trainer in IFS, for example, and are told to explicitly never speak to anyone other than the quote main part, the host, or the self with a capital S, which as it turns out isn't actually even a part, that's a fallacy, as it turns out. So how does the clinician who really doesn't want to do harm to their client, who wants to welcome all parts, who knows that they're maybe going against their training in order to do so, can you help them a little bit?
So I'm going to actually give my response in at least two parts, maybe three. First and foremost, I did say that I am an irreverent reverend. Let me contextualize this. I try to follow the teachings of Jesus and Buddha, quite honestly, and Krishna. When I was in seminary, I identified as a Trinitarian Universalist. I made that up, but now I realize I am a Trinitarian Universalist because different parts of me resonate with different spiritual pathways, particularly where they all align. Some of the first disciples of Jesus had their own interpretation of things, and that's where we get religion and religious abuse and oppression. Jesus never was into saying, I am God. Jesus would point to source. And Jesus understood that they were a part of source, right? So when we think of Dick Schwartz, and if you listen to Dick Schwartz talks about source and says, welcome and connect with anyone who shows up when they're ready. But then, like with the early disciples of Jesus, you have the early disciples of Dick. And they have their interpretive spin. I think harm has been done. I'm not anti-internal family system, nor am I anti-DBT, nor am I anti any treatment model. It is a model that is socially constructed to help be pathways, building bridges to healing, not barricades or blockades that you have to adhere to in some fascist way to be considered legitimate. We call those cults.
Right.
So never, ever, ever, ever put a model over on a client. The model is the tool that you and the client explore together how that model, or in most cases, an integrative approach of many models, come together to help that client with their presenting problems meet their goals. Does that help?
Yes. I'm hoping that we can help our providers exhale a little bit and get back in touch with their clinical intuition and their wisdom and be able to critically think while they're sitting in front of their clients and bring their whole selves into the practice of, yes, being informed by their training, but being able to adapt.
Which gets me to part three. I gave you part A, part B. Part C is you're not going to do this in 3 months.
Right. Right.
You know, I've been having the joy of beginning to consult with folks going through EMDR training, and I'm loving it. Saying to someone, you've been working with this person, and it's a short time. And they're giving you so many clues, so many data points, right? You know, you're not going to get into their family history until they trust you, and they'll trust you if you help them stabilize and ground. It's about the relationship before the model. And you're not on any, well, for most therapists, they're not on some kind of timeline that they have to finish by a certain point. And if they are on a timeline of finishing by a certain point, there's other factors involved that just really doesn't work for people with complex PTSD or PTSD. It takes longer. And so the other way, part 4 around systems, man, it was a packed question and we're unpacking it. Team approach here. We're working together to give you these answers. You build relationship and rapport with each self as they become known and want to be known and would like to participate in therapy. This is where internal communication work and internal mapping is important. You resource, and this is phase 2 of the 8 phases of EMDR. Phase 2 is resourcing. And for instance, when I'm working with a person that is a team Who's here today for some resourcing? Are you able to tell me? Permission giving.
Can you define resourcing for folks who are not familiar with EMDR? And I'm thinking systems who have never done it.
Yeah. Yeah. So for instance, let's say light stream. So instead of light stream comes down, light stream may be coming overhead down, or may be coming from the ground up, or may be coming from within or around you. What color is your light stream? What other textures and whatnot? And so I will have them share, well, this headmate, it came from above, and this one, it came from below, and this one came from within. But the point is, consistently, you give them the space. You don't direct them on how the light stream gets to them. You give them options. You have them explore textures. Resourcing, be very creative with the resourcing too. Like, so, hey, you've got a part that really has some big feels. What helps them ground between sessions? They like to hear this type of music. Put together a song list for me, and we can play that song list. Share it with me, and we can play it in the background. Each of your headmates warrants having their own protector, right? Their own source of support. So it really is helping the most right now. And whoever, does fronting and is taking the lead, who do you know is here? What do they need? You might be teaching them grounding, different breathing techniques. And one headmate mate like box breathing, and another one likes alternate nostril breathing. So it's really important that you spend the time getting to know everybody that wants to be known, asking them and giving them options on how they would like to be resourced. That's just another reason why you're not going to breeze through phase 2 EMDR in a couple of sessions. Even if it's not EMDR, when we're talking about stabilization and grounding, it's going to take a while.
Yeah. What you're describing is allowing people to unfold through their own unique process. That treatment, healing is not a cookie cutter process that looks the same for everybody. And it is harmful to try to shove people into those predetermined boxes. Allow yourself as a clinician to partner with the wisdom of the system sitting in front of you.
Absolutely. And let them know that they have the wisdom. Let them know that they actually have everything within them that they need. And your role as the therapist is to help them find what they already have, help them strengthen what they already have, affirm and celebrate them, and
Yeah.
support them. And let them
Yeah.
know how fucking amazing they are. Whenever they show up for therapy, you are fucking amazing.
I love that so much because things are changing slowly but surely. By and large, we are still a clinical world that is focused on individual pathology. We still have the pathological model. So I'm going to do a little, this isn't exactly a tangent, it's a slight right turn. You write really powerfully about trauma occurring in community, and so healing should also happen in community too. Given that we do have this clinical world that's focused on individual pathology, how can we help healing in community happen in the context of that hopefully changing mindset?
Ooh, yes. The importance of community. One of the things I was really noticing with my clients, and also come to realize, was my own coping. If I look back over the course of my life, there's certainly a lot of people thinking, I'm sure, that we're closer than I think we are and know we are. I think part of my survival in dealing with trauma is I would be there for everybody else, but I would hold myself back, because if I fully showed up, would I get bullied? Would I have this experience? This was all conditioned thinking in my brain. As I've gone through my own healing journey, I actually have people that I'm very authentic with. I can be real with you. And so as I was recognizing this in my own experience, I already saw it with my clients, that it's easy for them to be in a bedroom, on the computer, through virtual relationships only, because as safe as they can do it. to be in the same room with someone, to go out in the streets, to go out anywhere and risk being picked on because of their gender identity or gender expression. So there's a lot of isolation and aloneness. That aloneness is our country's sin
Yeah.
amongst the doom scrolling, the way we are so dissociated from community. One of the things that I really try to focus on here, not just myself, but the whole team, is the first steps towards really healing is beginning to feel better about yourself or yourselves, and then be willing to take the risk of meeting others. And so this is the role where the therapist does become that first source of unmasking and relationship building. It really behooves the therapist to continue repetitively voicing, go meet other people. And if it's at all possible, create those meeting spaces in your practice. So I ran a group. In the group, everybody pretty much didn't really connect with many other folk. All queer, most were trans, all have trauma. I used a book called Queer Dharma because it's by a queer author on yoga and meditation practices and the 8 branches of yoga. And so we met around that book. We would discuss the chapters, do some movement and breath work together. And 8 months later, I was like, okay, time to end the group. And they didn't want to end. They continued to meet. One of their first orders of business as a group that met elsewhere, they called themselves ORC, the Order of Reverend Karla.
Love that.
I know. I love this story. Started with playing RPG, and then they've morphed into doing other things. We also run an expressive arts group once a month. We have expressive arts. I have a fabulous therapist. They are just great with coming up with wonderful ideas. And so expressive arts once a month for our clients, whoever wants to come, the practice provides the gear. One of the things that we want to do is create bags of expressive arts materials that clients can take home between sessions when we find that is an avenue of healing and exploration. I have another fabulous team member. We just had a therapeutic movie night. They watched a movie for discussion therapeutically, and who knew that Chucky is queer? I did not know Chucky is queer, but apparently Chucky is queer. I don't watch horror movies because that is too triggering. Not happening. But there was such a strong desire to, through expressive arts, you can create crafts, you can watch clips together, how to create space within your practice, whether you're a solo practitioner or group practice, where you can bring clients together therapeutically to help them make connections. And how do you link as a practice in your community? So we, in our practice last fall after the election of 2024, we started Be the One. It was my wife's idea. And Be the One is based off of the Trevor Project, that one adult in an LGBTQ kiddo's life that's positive and affirming reduces the risk of attempted suicide by 40%.
Oh.
Yeah, it's pretty significant. So what we've been doing in our practice is linking with for-profits and not-for-profits in the community to create community events. One of the most successful community events was this past August, where there's a local hairstylist group called Dirty Apples. They wanted to get all of their other friends that are stylists and haircutters and have people sign up to get a makeover for free. Another group that we partner with is called the Friendship House. Friendship House works with persons that have experienced homelessness or are on work release and reentry once they are released from being incarcerated. And so I've done trainings with them and working with them. And so Dirty Apples and Friendship House, what we did is We helped organize and promote it. There was, I think, 8 stylists. And so over a 5-hour period, people signed up for a free cut. And any money they gave went to Friendship House. And people brought in, they always need toilet paper and they always need paper towels. And so they not only got Friendship House got a monetary donation, but they got gear that they needed for all their transitional housing. It filled up. It filled. And we did that because earlier in June, we, at the Pride event, as a practice, had a table, and we purchased a second table and invited Dirty Apples to come to that with the motto that we believe that gender affirming care is from the inside out and outside in.
I love this.
Yeah. So what we're doing as a practice and working with other partners is to cultivate relationships and create events in the community that give third spaces for persons to connect. We've been able to connect with, in Delaware, we have Queer Social and Queer Kickball to promote them and partner with them and encourage our client population to go there, but also people in the community that follow us in social media to know about these events and opportunities. We've also partnered with Sean's House, and Sean's House is named after an individual that did unfortunately end their life 5 years ago. And they now, the family and friends out of that experience had a fundraiser that they were going to give money away. They raised so much money that they created Sean's House, which is 24/7 availability for mental health support. They really target between the age of 14 and 30. They have peer support. You can have someone knock on the door at 3 a.m. and they've got a camera to make sure it's safe enough, and they will let that person in. We've partnered with them to do events. Basically, what I'm saying is get out of your silo, get off your phone where you're doom scrolling, get out of the television where you binge watch 12 shows. Connect with people in the community that have shared values and beliefs. When you begin working with each other together, you inspire and encourage each other. You find hope, you find healing, and you save lives.
I wish there was a way to just give you a standing ovation right this moment. That was such a powerful example and roadmap, which so many people are looking for. Really beautiful. And for clinicians who are wondering, "Hey, how can we be more affirming, but we're afraid of getting it wrong?" To rewind and re-listen to that.
You know what? We all make mistakes.
Absolutely.
True story. Very early on in my practice, solo practitioner, part-time at the time, parent misgendered the kiddo. The parent was affirming and getting used to the new pronouns, misgendered the kiddo, and I go in, we sit down, we start talking. I misgendered the kiddo, and I was like, whoa. Kiddo's like, whoa. I'm like, I'm so sorry. That was weird. And they're like, yeah, that was weird. And that's okay. I said, actually, it's not okay. I'm sorry I misgendered you.
Yeah.
And I think I misgendered you because I listened to your parent and I let my brain move too fast with my mouth. And so I commit to do better. And out of that experience, I really sat with that. And I'm like, you know what? When I see a stranger on the street and they open the door for me and I look at how they're dressed and assume their gender identity without them actually telling me, then I may be misgendering them too. So I moved in the direction to go gender neutral with my narratives and with my speech. And so I say, hey, good person. Howdy, folks. Hello, beautiful humans. Thank you, good person. I don't use he or her, ma'am, sir. I will say they as a default because we already use they. Like if someone cuts us off in traffic and we can't see them, we're going to say, they just cut me off. So we already use they as a default when we don't know how a person identifies and they haven't told us. We do that. So I just moved my narrative around. And that's an easy thing to do. And the second piece is to slow down how fast you think something to how fast you speak it. We control that. And when we intentionally slow down, we're going to reduce the mistake making, not just with pronouns, but across the board. If we slow down thoughts to speaking, the tread that we feel in our mouths when we have foot in mouth is going to go way down.
You know, what you just modeled is also really powerful because we are going to do harm. It just happens. But when we're able to recognize the harm and we can work on repair, we can strengthen relationships and help people heal through that process itself.
Absolutely. To make the distinction, it's not the client's job to educate you. Right. So when a therapist knows that they could benefit from some more information, that's where consulting comes into play. That's where reading and professional development comes into play. And when you make a mistake, apologize and move on. Don't be over dramatic about it. Sometimes it can be helpful to have that mistake because then you get to have repair with them. And for many of us, we didn't get the repair. And so when we experience a relationship repair in a therapeutic environment, that does a lot of healing. Be willing to make a mistake and even say, I might make mistakes. And I need you to know that you don't need to people please me by withholding if I make a mistake. And therapists have to really hold to that. And when you make a mistake, shut up, listen, don't give excuse, apologize immediately, and work on the repair.
Remember that impact is more important than intention.
Yes.
So centering your client
Yes.
when some type of harm happens, regardless of what your intentions are, focus on that impact and repair that impact.
Yeah.
That is healing.
Yes.
You've said a number of times, slow and steady is fast, particularly in working with complex trauma. So I wonder, this is for everybody listening, because I think it's important for systems who are like, give me the roadmap and the check boxes because I want to be better, whatever their definition of better is. And for therapists who sometimes worry about doing something too slow, you can only move as fast as the slowest part in a system anyway. How do you embody that pace in your work with dissociative and LGBTQ clients? What does that look like for you?
One is slow down how fast you speak, right? That's an illustration. You, the therapist, slow down. Why are you in a hurry? What have you done to center and ground yourself between sessions so that your energy is the calmest energy in the room to be the mirror neuron, right? So slow and steady begins with the therapist. We only take clients as far as we take ourselves, right? So what are we doing outside of the therapeutic session for our own healing work? There may be some more data points, but we're going to move now into with the clients, slow and steady. Why are you in a hurry to meet their goals? Are you having some performance anxiety, thinking that they need to hit some benchmark for you to feel validated and affirmed? That's imposter syndrome stuff. Take that outside of the therapeutic setting.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
If the client's in a hurry, I want to feel better. I want to feel better. I want you to feel better too. Did you feel this poorly overnight? No. So it's going to take some time. And as eager as you are to work with me, we have to build our own alliance and trust. We're going in this journey together. So if we think about it, and I used this metaphor the other day with an EMDR consultee, scuba diving, right? I even have used this metaphor with a client because I was like, that was so good with the consultee. Let me use it with the client. Scuba diving. You wake up and you're like, I want to scuba dive today. Have you ever scuba dived? No. Do you think you're going to scuba dive? Do you think you're going to throw the gear on and go into deep waters the day you think you want to do it? No. You start in a pool, in a building, and you start in the shallow end. There are steps you take to strengthen your skills before you hit the next level of risk. So that when you hit that next level of risk, we don't have a worst case scenario. We have a best case scenario. So that when the day comes, when you are in the deep with your tank on, breathing well, in an environment that's conducive for you to be in the water at that time, that you get to see all of the beauty and all of the scary, and it's healing and liberating and joyful. And you come out of the water again to do it another day.
That was amazing. Tell us something that gives you hope right now, whether it's the field, your community, your work.
Ooh, we're feeling some big emotions. There's a lot of answers.
That's good.
Yes, it depends on who you ask.
Yeah, that's fair.
So to kind of to honor everything that just flooded my brain narratively, my wife is amazing. 5 years ago, we experienced a trauma event with my diagnosis. And over that time, she experienced some challenges with everything that I went through. Because, they say when one person transitions, the family transitions. When one person realizes they're a system, everybody has to shift and adjust. As amazing as she is, as wonderful as she is, it still took us 18 years to believe that she loved us unconditionally. It wasn't because she didn't. It was because we struggled to believe that. Our healing journey has been about recognizing that we are lovable and we can be loved. And so much of what I'm doing now, finding purpose and meaning out of what we went through, is to advocate for people, for persons, and whether they are plural or single, that if you don't believe you're lovable, I'm here. And I want to bring other people into your mix that tell you that you are lovable and can be loved and you're amazing. So I hope to be able to help others find deep love within. It took me most of my life to have that feeling. Out of that is you begin to believe that you're lovable you begin to invite other people in. And so, we now have friends in very authentic, real ways, professional friends, personal friends. And it's like, well, the hope of being able to help others have that, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
As awful as some people can be, they don't get the final say. There is joy and beauty. There is the dark side, and there is the force.
Yeah.
Lean into the force and don't let go. Both are true. The glass is half empty, and the glass is half full. Where you choose to look and invest your energy will really help you in your journey. Both are true. We have to deal with the half empty. We have to deal with fascist regimes. We have to deal with systems of oppression. But they are not you. You are beautiful. You are fabulous. You are amazing. You are loved. That is my mantra within, and that is my mantra without. And so my hope is to help others find that truth for themselves and their selves, and that we do it in community because we are fucking amazing.
There's nothing more beautiful than helping people see that no one ever took their light.
Now,
And when they discover their own light, it's amazing.
it is amazing. Trauma happens in relationship, and healing happens in relationship.
Yeah.
Find your people. We exist. We are here.
So many mic drop moments from you today. I love this.
Well, you know, I think all cylinders are firing, and I really do. I do feel this. Like every part of me wants to have a point in saying, you matter. We love you. You know, find Legos, find plushies,
Yes.
find fidget.
You have such a powerful, beautiful light and energy that is literally just exuding that I know people are feeling while they listen to you. Before we wrap up, I'm curious if there's anything that we didn't ask that you wish we had, anything that you would like to leave folks with, anything that you'd like to say directly to people who are queer, plural, or both.
I did feel this kind of chiming in and say that if it's hard to begin your healing with people, go into nature,
Yeah.
go into the woods, go to the waters, listen to the birds. When we can connect with the ground of our being, when we can place our feet upon the soil, the sand, the rock, the vibrations, we know that every living energy is connected with every other living energy. If we can engage in practices that help us vibrate with like energy, that may be the beginning of the healing journey. If you're not able to be with people yet, that may be the way to be with people, is you start first in nature and you never leave nature. And related to that is we cannot live on this planet without taking care of Mother Earth.
Yeah.
We have to. For those of us that are systems, it may come easier for us. And for those listening that may not be systems, I'm an old dyke and an old social worker who learned systems theory way back in time. Everything is a system. And so connect, plug in to the parts of the system that really vibrate with healing joy so that you can add to that energy. Our collective energy of striving towards goodness is going to shift the balance in our world. And that is not just for queer people, not just for people that have dissociative experience, that is for the collective energy of life.
Yeah. Can't thank you and your whole system enough for the ways in which you showed up, for the wisdom you shared, the love you share, the energy you share. This has been really amazing and it will help so many people.
Hope so. Thank you so much for giving us this opportunity. We really appreciate it. We really love your podcast. It's been a part of our
Thank you.
healing journey for sure. And so, thanks.
Such an honor to have you. What a powerful episode. To everyone listening, we really hope that you found lots of value in Karla and their system's wisdom. There are so many takeaways here. If you did find value, we would love it if you shared it with people who could use this information, providers, clinicians, systems, anyone. We'll make sure that all of the resources that were mentioned are linked in the show notes for you. And until next time, let's keep healing. Thank you for tuning in. You can find our blog on Substack at healingmyparts.substack.com and on Instagram at healingmyparts. Just a disclaimer, any information shared in this podcast is not a substitute for professional therapy or behavioral health care. Nor does listening to the podcast constitute a therapist-client relationship. Please be sure to take extra good care of you. And until next time, keep healing and thriving.